Testing, testing, testing. Yep. Testing. All right, good. Well, I guess it's time for us to begin. We appreciate your attendance this evening, and it's been a beautiful 2 days. So it kind of gets you fired up about the fall, doesn't it? And so it just that's one of the beautiful things about living in the Ozarks is the 4 seasons, and we get to experience all 4 seasons. So get a little rain the other night. So that's nice to get some rain. Just hope we get some more rain here soon. If you've not been with us, our lesson theme is biblical wisdom, godly wisdom. Our first 2 lessons was talking about making the most of every opportunity that we have in life. And really, when you go throughout all the different lessons, that seems to always be kind of the foundation of everything that we're trying to do, within the lessons and within our lives, is making the most of every opportunity. That's a biblical principle that Paul has. Last week, we looked at a warning against laziness. And we talked about that, what Jesus talked about, that, we have the light of the day, but there comes a time, darkness, when no man will work. So if you're here right now, and you're breathing right now, and those that are outside watching, and others, they have the light of day. And the choices we make in our lives to be good stewards of our opportunities, to be good stewards of what God has granted us with all the blessings, both earthly and worldly, and most importantly, spiritual blessings, that we have all these blessings and we have today to use those. And use those in a way that will be productive and will also influence others. After all, we're called to be a light. We're called to be the salt. So when we make every effort in our lives to do the things that we have been called to do, and the opportunity as we have, those things that are noble, those things that are lovely, those things that are pure, as Paul talks about, then we need to seize the day. We need to seize the moment. Because there will be a time where we may not be able to do certain things, but we still can do something. But there may be a time we cannot do anything. And then when the time comes of our death, our mortality, then our time that we had is over. Tonight's lesson, a biblical principle, is on friendships. And if you look at the title on your sheet, Lesson 4, it says, Friendships will make you or break you. That may be a little bit dramatic, but I think it's meant to be strong, because the Bible does speak about friendships. So when we start our bell ringer, like we like to do to kind of start our class, I've got a few questions. Number one, what are the hallmarks of true friendship? In other words, what are characteristics of true friendship? Share out. Loyalty.
Reliable.
The what?
Reliable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What else? Sometimes it's better to think about, okay, I need to think of a really, what I call a very intimate friend that I have. Someone who's a really close friend that I have. Now think about their traits that are endearing to you, that makes them who they are to you. Trustworthiness, absolutely. Available. Anything else?
Listening ear. Empathetic.
Empathetic, listening, open, someone we can talk to, and they talk to us. What else? Okay. Considerate. Those are all good, and those are all great characteristics. Second question in our bell ringer tonight is, how do we select close personal relationships that strengthen our devotion to God? How does that evolve? How does it evolve that we develop a strong relationship that draws us closer to God? What are things that make a friendship last or consistent, I guess you could say? Common interest. So when when you interpret the question, strengthen our devotion to God, a friendship we're looking at is the common interest is pleasing God. Okay? Very good. What else? To keep good friends, and this is whether it be friends that are, help us, or friends that, if we go back even in time, we had friends that were not Christians, like childhood and friends. What was one of the characteristics that was very important for you to develop that friendship, besides the attributes we already talked about? Maybe the other question would be, what can kind of end a friendship? Mm-hmm. Okay. The separation sometimes sever a relationship, a friendship. Not that it's like we're done, but because of separation, we do not spend time with them. We're not intimate with them anymore. I think of one of my good friends that I coach with named Eddie Jones. He was a member at the Southside Church of Christ. He's been a coach down in Georgia for, oh my goodness, probably, as long as I've been coaching, almost. And we were very close. But once he moved to Georgia, just that distance, and we've stayed in contact over the years, but recent years, not so much. So separation can impede a close relationship. I imagine if we met each other tonight, we'd just pick up where we left off. Have a lot of catching up to do, but it's just not necessarily the same in that. So, how do we do that? Let's see, we have one more question. What are some examples? Well, surely we can, I know we can do this. What are some examples of some true friends that we read about in the Bible? Give me some biblical characters that you could say they were really true friends. Absolutely. That immediately, if this was, what was the show that you used to get points for? Family Feud. Craig just hit the survey said, he just hit probably the 92 points. David and Jonathan, absolutely. We think of a friendship that was enduring, lasting. We think of David and Jonathan. What else?
I think Jesus and John.
Okay. Absolutely. Really, Jesus and John and then, the disciples, and then as we'll see tonight, Jesus' friendship with more than just that. I think of Llewellyn, I think of the sons of Zebedee and Peter and Andrew, those 4 fishermen. I think of them. They had to have been pretty good friends. They worked together, and they pretty much chose a life of sacrifice and a life to follow Jesus together. So, yeah. Mary and Martha. Okay. How about Paul and Timothy? If you go to Philippians Chapter 2, verse 20, up there in our verses, it says, Paul said, I have no one else like him who will show me genuine concern. That tells me there was a very deep and abiding friendship. So, this evening we're going to talk about what are the hallmarks of true friendship. How do we select close personal relationships that strengthen our devotion to God, as opposed to relationships that cause us to our devotion to falter. Now, there's a lot of different levels when you think of friendship relationships. There's people we're friendly with. There's people that are acquaintances. There are people like at work that there's some camaraderie. Okay? Then one would make an argument, well, my wife's my best friend. And that's not in all cases in marriages, is it? Okay? Because you have some marriages that are really, the attitude is pretty split, and they don't really look after the other one's interests because of selfishness, and they don't get along. It's very dysfunctional. And they're not overly loyal to one another and sincere. Okay? There's bitterness. That's not, obviously, a godly, enduring friendship. But when we look at relationships and we look at the different kinds of relationships, and even in our church, we have relationships among our brothers. A lot of a lot of the things that we'll look at tonight is very applicable to all those things. But looking at it kind of from a very close friend, someone very intimate, because a lot of our relationships are somewhat shallow overall. We don't like to say that, but they are to a certain extent. Okay? And then we also know a relationship that's very intimate and very enduring. I think we all yearn and should for good friendship. I mean, I think it's built in us. Jesus looked for friends. Okay? He was friendly. Psalmist talks about that. Okay? And throughout the extent of when we look at biblical characters, we were studying Daniel Wednesday night. Now I'm doing a series of lessons at Black Oak on Daniel. Well, Daniel, his relationship with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, there was a relationship among them that was very intimate, very close. And they needed that, considering the circumstances they were in. Let's go ahead and look at our focus scriptures. Proverbs 18, verse 24. One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. 1 Samuel 23:16 says, and Saul's son Jonathan went to David at Horash, and he helped him find strength in God. And that goes back to the relationship between Jonathan and David. Philippians 2:20. Paul says about Timothy, I have no one else like him who will show genuine concern for my welfare. Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times. Proverbs 27:6, faithful are the wounds of a friend. Proverbs 29:5, the man who flatters his friend spreads a net for his feet. John 14:21-23, whoever has my commands and keep them is the one who loves me. The one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love them and show myself to them. Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love him, and we will come to them and make our abode with them. 1 Corinthians 15:33, Paul warns, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good morals. I want us to consider the following statement down below the bell ringer. There are friends in whose company we are encouraged to go on with God. There are friends in whose company that we are tempted to allow our devotion to Christ to falter. But friendships are seldom, if ever, neutral. Think about that for a moment. Friendships are seldom, if ever, neutral. Now, we may want to say, well, this good friend of mine is not going to affect me spiritually, we'll say, in our minds. But if this person is someone who chooses, and you choose to be your intimate friend, they can have some influence on you. Okay? One way or the other. You may have that relationship where one's not a believer and the other is a believer and able to work through all that, but it will take great means to do such a thing. In choosing our friends, in intimate friends, in close friends, the Bible has quite a bit to say about some of these things, and we're going to kind of get into that right now. The first essential question we're going to look at tonight is, before we get there, let me say this. It's been said that if you have one true friend in the world, then you are very rich. Someone that you can confide in, someone who knows the worst about you without making you feel like a fool because you've shared it with them. The kind of person with whom you can interact without becoming something other than that. And that's one of the things that, going back to in one of our examples of Jonathan and David, we can see that you have two extremes that come from different environments. One being from a shepherd, and the other being raised in the royal house. One being raised to be the next king, and the other one becoming a folk hero. One whose father became so envious and so angry and with hate wanted to destroy the other, and yet the other one chose to submit and humble himself to allow his friend from the fields, from the wilderness, to rise up. And to rise up, not only rise up, understanding and realizing that his being in the throne was at jeopardy because of his friend, and yet he was there the whole time. But yet at the same time, Jonathan's commitment to his father, we see even into his death. Jonathan, of course, the Bible, as we read in one of our scriptures, he strengthened. Having a friend like that made David, maybe that's all really David had, was Jonathan at that time. And because he had Jonathan, he was rich indeed. Being alone is not something that we want to seek and be. That's not, God didn't make us to be alienated from people and isolate ourselves and have nothing to do with folks and not like people or be likable. God endears us with the qualities to reach out, to make relationships, to have and even develop, hopefully, a good, solid friend. And when in the world that we live in today, the culture we live in today, and I don't like to harp on that because it is the day we live in, but when you think about how we developed relationships years ago versus how relationships are today, because of technology, which has its good points, has its networking, has its ability to reach out. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's all bad. But because that, quite often, it allows us, unfortunately, to not nurture a true relationship with someone. I mean, just going to a restaurant or a coffee shop or anywhere, and you'll see people sitting across from one another, and they're not actually engaging in anything other than their phones, and they're kind of having some small talk, and they meet again, they do this. And some says, well, that's how they communicate. How in-depth is that communication? How in-depth? Think about some of your really close friends and how much time that you spent with them and how intimate it was. And then compare that to maybe your children or your grandchildren and maybe even you now. Have you developed that? And of course, the pandemic's made things even worse because now we're all afraid of each other. Now we've got our, we're afraid, of too much contact or relationship. Okay? So there's a lot of dangers today in developing not only being a good brother or sister in Christ, but also developing even strong relationships. Now someone says, well, who needs friends? I sincerely believe when we talk about the spread of the gospel, when we talk about evangelism, and we talk about spreading the gospel, studies have been made, and churches are finding out that churches grow based quite often, and most usually based upon relationships and friendships. In other words, people see you at work, and because you develop an intimate relationship with them, because you're a friend to them, they see that you're consistent in your life, they see how you act and how you carry on, and they want to be a little bit like you. They want to know more about you, and then that door opens because now you have an opportunity to bring them. We call that friendship evangelism. You can call it whatever you want to. But when you think about that, a lot of times people are drawn in. Think of the things that you go, entertainment events. How many of you went to an entertainment event just because you were with your friends? Anybody? You can raise your hand. Okay, all right? Yeah, we get dragged to stuff all the time. I drag people to stuff, from time to time. Hey, won't you go with me? And they're like, yeah, we'll go. Yeah, sounds good. They're not really wanting to go, but they're going because they're friends. And then all of a sudden they go and they had fun. Maybe you've been on a vacation with someone like that where they really want to go and you took them and all of a sudden they were like, this is awesome. When are we going to do this again? See, we're prone to trust our friends and have that relationship. And so when we think about the importance of friendship and how it can make an impact, I really believe it makes a big impact on the growth of a church. When people trust you, put your name in it. When they trust you, they may want to hear more about Jesus because you reflect Christ. I'm not against knocking on doors. I did as a kid. I'm not saying that's a bad method, but when I knock on a door, when people knock on my door, what's the first thing I want to do when I'm in the house? What's the first thought? Yeah. What, say that, Craig?
Turn the light off.
Yeah, turn the light, exactly. Figuratively speaking or physically. What is it? What do you want? What are you selling? Because we don't have that relationship. So the impact of friendships and being a good friend really does make sense, doesn't it? And it's very important. You think David was good for Jonathan? I think he was. Because think about Jonathan, the household he was being raised in. He was being raised in a house where the man of the house, the patriarch and the king, was angry all the time. And yet he had David. And they loved each other. They stuck close to each other like brothers. Did David need a good friend? Well, look at his relationship with his brothers. Wasn't real, I'm sure it was kind of strong, but they gave him a pretty hard time, around Goliath. You remember what they said to him? They said, you're a show-off. You're just here to do this. Okay? But Jonathan, He never accused David of being a show-off. He strengthened him. He helped him. So, let's continue here. We need to develop friendships. We need to be good friends. So, the question is, what are 3 characteristics of a true friend? Number 1, first of all, in looking at the Scriptures, in the wisdom of the Scriptures, friendship, a true friend is always loyal. This is actually a statement from Proverbs 17:17, where it says, a friend does what? What does a friend do? We can look up there at the top. He loves at what? At all times. I know Lynn has shared this before, and I know we have a number of veterans in here that have been in the Army. One of the things that they develop is that camaraderie to the very point of death, that they will defend each other to the death. That's why those relationships continue after. That's why Lynn still has reunions with them. Because, why? Because they were always loyal. You could count on them. They have your back. Good friendship is one that is loyal, one that loves at all times, is not based on success, not based on the circumstances, not based on the looks or the style, not based on money. It's based on an enduring love and devotion to that person. If you're tempted, as I've been tempted before, and especially in my youth, when you would see certain people together and they just didn't look like they matched, sometimes your thought, you might not have said it out loud, but you said, wow, that's an odd picture. Look at that person and that person. They don't look like they match. See, if we look at things from a shallow standpoint, that's how we look at things sometimes. But what we didn't know, or what I didn't know, or what I didn't think of, is that those two were linked to the core. They didn't care how each other looked or each other's background. They were loyal. They were comfortable. Thick or thin. That's one of the things that we see throughout. You think of Paul and Timothy in that relationship, how Paul was a way older man, and yet Timothy was a very way young his age, and yet they developed that intimate relationship where age was not a problem. Sometimes we get the wrong idea that we have to be compatible to people that look like us. Brethren, that's not how friendship's based on. Look at Jesus when he came to Zacchaeus. He made a friend of Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus was a dirty cheat. Look at Jesus at the woman at the well. She was an adulterer and had been for a long time and all that. And yet Jesus makes a relationship, develops a relationship with her. And on we could go with just the life examples of Christ. And how, in fact, and the reason why I know that is because you remember what the Pharisees accused him of, and this guy is a friend. They said he's a friend to whom? He's a friend to the sinners. He's a friend. He dines with them. He treats them with respect. He's developed relationships with them. He cares about them. Of course, now Jesus was bringing the gospel to them. Jesus was giving them the opportunity to open up. If someone was going to pull him away, as he told Peter, "Get thee behind me, Satan," if someone was going to pull away from his purpose and was going to affect his relationship with his Father, with God, then he drew the line, as he drew the line with Peter. He would have severed that relationship if Peter would have continued to draw him out. When he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." In other words, no, Peter, won't be a part of that. You want to be a part of me, then you're going to be a servant. You're going to serve. You're going to be sacrificial. And you know what? Peter became that. He became sacrificial. He became that servant. And a lot of it was that enduring friendship that he had been abided in him and put into him, as what we read from John a while ago. So much of our culture alienates us on the basis of certain external circumstances. But genuine friendship, while not unaware of those things, overlooks them or beyond those things and remains consistent. Good friendships are loyal. Number 2, it's marked by honesty. In Proverbs 27, verse 6, notice it says, "The faithful are the wounds of a friend." The wounds of a friend. Think about that just for a moment. My question is, don't we receive wounds from our enemies? I mean, when you think about the paradox here, we receive wounds, hurtful things from people that don't like us, but from our friends, they prop us up. They're the hugs and the kisses. But yet the proverb writer says that we benefit from the wounds of a friend. What are you saying, Solomon? You need to realize that genuine friendship is prepared to wound in order that we might become all that God intends us to be. Because in the pain of the wound, there may well be progress on our journey. Each of us is in need of a friendship for this reason. We need someone who can see our blind spots and can help us overcome those blind spots. That's what good friends do. We don't like that, though, all the time. And so, therefore, we don't develop that kind of relationship. I remember when I was a young coach, I had a particular player that I was too hard on. Just absolutely, I was hard on him. A lot of it because I knew a lot about him and what he did outside, of the athletic in the school, and I didn't approve of it. Didn't like him for it. But when he was in practice and when he was in our team, he was a yes sir, no sir kind of guy. Worked hard and everything. In a game, he didn't perform so well. He made a lot of mistakes. And that came hard on him. But a lot of that came because just to be quite honest, I didn't really like him and what he stood for. So a friend pulled me aside and said, "You're too hard on that young man." And I said, "Well, wait a second. Let me tell you. It's not hard on him because here's what he's doing." No. You're not listening to me. You're too hard on him. The things that you've crossed the line, the things you do, and now he's turned you off. You're not making any headway with him. All you're doing is alienating him. And now other guys are seeing that. Now, right at first, I didn't like it. And the stubbornness of me said, "You know what? That's how I coach. That's how I'm going to do it. He'll have to. This is a part of his growing up." But what it was a part of my growing up. A good friend wouldn't have done that. You know what a good friend would have done? "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's not getting it done. Hey, you were right. I mean, he didn't do that, and he has been a mess, et cetera, et cetera." Been right there with me, and I've had people like that before. Haven't you? Have you ever had someone that was even that you might have been doing something you shouldn't have been doing, but they were just right there behind you? That's the way to show them. That's the way to go. You see that sometimes when kids get in fights. You see a guy behind that kid's going, "Get him, and all that." Is he really a friend? No, he's not a friend. We need to develop our relationships in a friendship way, in an intimate friend that we understand that the wounds of a friend are good. When Jesus looked at Peter, going back to what we said earlier, he said, "You get thee behind me, Satan," because he knew Satan was working through Peter. He was actually restoring Peter. He was pushing to the point that you need to understand where you're at. And you know what? I need that. I needed it then. I'll still need it. And we all need that. But unfortunately, sometimes human nature steps in, and then that happens. We get criticized in that way. Even if it's an intimate friend, we're done. That's why developing intimate relationships and good friendships matter. That's why when you're in that meeting that you've developed that relationship. If someone just comes out of the blue that has no relationship with you at all, and they come and they tell you that, then you put your defense system up and go, no, I'm not going to listen to you. What do you know? You don't know the half of it. But when someone from the inside comes in and says, hey, you've done something, I want to help you through this. We need relationships like that. That's marked with true honesty. In fact, when you read Proverbs 28, verse 23, it says, he who rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue. He who rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue. Proverbs 28, verse 23. In other words, you better be careful when someone's always flattering you. Did anybody take the time to tell Belshazzar when he said, hey, you want to see what a real party is? Go down there to the temple stuff, bring the temple stuff up here, and we'll have a real party. Did anyone step in and say, hey, you're crossing the line. You mess with those things are considered holy. Bad things could happen. No one did. Did anyone step in for the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15? I guess they didn't. Because what did he yearn to do? Feed himself with what? With what the leftovers from the pigs. Says he was down in that country. He had lots of money. He had a good living, which tells me he had great he had some companions and they had a good time. See, flattery is dangerous. Now, not that we should stop lifting up and encouraging one another. Of course, we're supposed to edify and encourage one another, but we have to be careful that we don't become so shallow in that it becomes unmeaningful. And that's one of the things that's kind of a pet peeve with me in education today, because in education, we've swung to this pendulum where we just tell kids they're awesome. I bet I hear the word awesome like 100 times a day. You're so awesome. Kid does something he shouldn't do, but you're awesome. And I'm like going, no, he's not. If that's awesome, then we need to find a better word than awesome. I mean, we need to be able to come. And so our society sometimes says, well, there's no wrong. There's nothing wrong. And so everything's okay. It's your way. Let's glorify in everything. Even if it's immoral, it doesn't matter. It's all good. Okay? Flattery is dangerous. Number 3, a true friend will not only be honest, but he also will be sensitive. And that kind of goes back to what we just said. A true friend is not someone who's, looking for those moments to wound their friend. A true friend is not going to go to their friend and say, when you left the room a while ago, or I've been hearing from some people have been saying, and then they pass on that gossip. That's not true friendship. That's needling somebody. That's making someone go home and worry. That's making someone unsure of themselves. That's not what true friends do. Talk about others. Gossip about their friends. That's not the intimate relationship that Jesus has with his disciples, and not the intimate relationships that we should use as a standard of how that we conduct ourselves. Yes, we can be honest. I don't know if we want to throw the word brutally honest in there, because brutally honest almost means like, you're trying to really stick it to them. A kind word, an admonition. The Bible gives examples of that. There's all kinds of ways we do things in love. When someone does something in a way that is only going to hurt, that's hurtful, you know what? In some cases, and I can tell you from my experience, and I know Craig and many of you that have been in positions where leadership and coaches and stuff, I'll be honest, I don't want to know what everyone's saying. Okay? It doesn't matter to me what they're saying in the crowds. If there's a chant, or if there's this, or these guys are saying, it's not going to lift me up. In fact, it's probably going to get me upset. I don't want to know it. Now, if someone doesn't like you, or is out to get you, or they're your rival or something, they'll be quick at feet to tell you what's all wrong, what they're hearing. That's not friendship. That's not honesty in the right way. Okay? I think of my wife. My wife, of course, is my wife. And when I say that, I'm saying, obviously you can say, well, that's not a friend and by definition. But yeah, she is my best friend. And I hope your spouse is your best friend. Because of our relationship, she has the ability to tell me, Darren, you're wrong. Okay? And she tells me that a lot. Okay? What? If she was here tonight, she would tell me, she'd probably tell me, Darren, now when you said that, or Darren, but you know what? Because of our relationship, because I know she's loyal to me, I know she's honest, I know she loves me, I know we have that relationship, I can handle that. Well, we didn't get into application when we look at the life of Christ and how Jesus was a true standard of what a true friendship is. And we'll look a little bit at that next Wednesday night. Thank you for your attention. Do it again.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to services tonight. We have a few announcements before we get started. Chloe Gibbs is home recovering from being in the hospital, so that's good news. This Sunday we're going to have a church, Eat Church, with a traditional potluck. The potluck will be immediately after morning service, followed by a special presentation by Brett McCaslin on the mission work in India. But it will be a traditional potluck. Also on September 26th at 5 p.m., there's going to be praise in the park. That'll be at the Prairie Grove Battlefield Park at 5 p.m. Gambia sponsorships. It's time to renew the student sponsorships for the Living Children's Academy in the Gambia. The cost is $150 per student. It covers the entire year. Please turn that contribution in by Sunday, October 3rd. Also due on Sunday, October 3rd are your change cans for the Paragould Children's Home. We do ask that you fill out an attendance card tonight. Please put those in the pews, not back in the receptacle, but please put them in the pews and they will be picked up later. And leading in our worship service tonight, first prayer will be led by Joe Dell. Our song director will be Derek. Our speaker tonight is Mark. And our dismissal prayer will be led by Mickey.
First song tonight is song number 982. Song number 982. We'll sing this through twice, and after this we'll have our opening prayer and then the Devo. We shall assemble on the mountain. We shall assemble at the throne with humble hearts into his presence. We bring an offering of song, glory and honor and dominion unto the Lamb, unto the King. Oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. We sing the song of the redeemed. We shall assemble on the mountain. We shall assemble at the throne with humble hearts into his presence. We bring an offering of song, glory and honor and dominion unto the Lamb, unto the King. Oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. We sing the song of the redeemed.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, and thank you, Father. May you bless you go to difference. Thank you for allowing us to come here together tonight in the middle of the week. Congregate, fellowship, and worship you, Lord. I pray that we go into the rest of this week, be an example to those around us. Pray that we are a light to those we come in contact with, that shine your light in the darkness of this world. Help others to come to know you, come to love you, because they know us. Help us just to be a blessing to those around us and show your love and your light to those who need it. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all your son, cross mercy.
And the invitation song is going to be number 288. If you guys want to turn over there and mark that, 288. I think the most quoted verse, or some variation of it anyway, that I've heard quoted over the years is Matthew 7:1, which is, "Do not judge." Even people who have never read any of the Bible know that little snippet, but that's exactly what it is. It's just a snippet. We know that the whole verse says this. It says, "Do not judge so that you will not be judged." But even then, the single verse is not able to be understood without the accompanying verses that follow. Why do you suppose this verse is quoted so often? Well, my best guess is that people simply want to do whatever they want to do with the least amount of guilt possible. Some even go beyond demanding that they not be judged and take it one step even further by demanding that their behavior be accepted. In the world that we live in today, anything less than 100% acceptance is often labeled as hate or intolerance. So Jesus' teaching here in Matthew 7 in the first 6 verses is misunderstood by both those outside and inside the church, yet with a little examination, the teaching is crystal clear. Simply stated, Jesus is teaching the difference between the wrong way to approach judgment of others and the correct way to approach judgment of others. We are supposed to judge others, but only after we have properly examined ourselves through the lens of the Bible. So what I've learned is that when I examine myself prior to examining another person is that I have a greater sympathy and I have a greater empathy. I'm kinder, I'm more gentle, and why? Because upon proper personal examination, I see that I am the one that they sing about in the song Amazing Grace, whenever it says, "How sweet the sound that saved a wretch," that's me, "a wretch like me." So the word wretch isn't something that we use a whole lot today. It's not very common in our world anymore. So here is some help with the meaning of it. Webster says that it means worthless, despicable, and inferior. And that's me, a wretch. So judgment is important and it is helpful when done properly. And so I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of Darren tonight. If you were in his class and he was talking about friendship and relationships, intimate relationships with people, and the pros of having that. You get things like accountability. You can share with your friends, if they don't know already, some struggles that you're going through or some sort of sin that you're going through, and they can help get you back on the right track. So in that sense, judgment is very important. I'm also going to steal something that Darren read tonight. He read from Proverbs 28 in verse 23, and it reads like this. It says, "He who rebukes a man will find more favor afterward than he who flatters with the tongue." So Darren read it twice, so I'm going to read it twice because I think it makes a lot of sense. "He who rebukes a man will find more favor afterward than he who flatters with the tongue." Before we judge, let's first examine ourselves against the only acceptable measure of personal goodness, which is the perfect standard of Jesus Christ. And then, and only then, will our hearts be ready to examine another. If you have a need before the church tonight, won't you come to the front right now while we stand and while we sing?
I need thee every hour, most gracious Lord. No tender voice like thine can peace afford. I need thee, oh, I need thee every Temptations lose their power when thou art nigh. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. I need thee every hour, most holy one. Oh, make me thine indeed, thou blessed Son. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come. Are there any other announcements? If not, would you please get your songbooks and turn to song number 834. If you didn't have your songbooks, I will probably need your help with this one. So, 834. Let's sing the first and last verse. After the song will be dismissed in prayer. Jesus gave his life on Calvary, on Mount Calvary, cruel Calvary, paved the way by blood that we might do that shining crown. Praise his holy name, salvation has been brought down. Glory, praise the Lord, salvation has been brought down. Go and shout and tell it to the world around. Tell it today. Tell it today. Preach the word that God might live on thy crown. Tell the lost salvation is full and free. Spread the news all over the land and sea. Tell it to the tell it afar. Praise the Lord, salvation has been brought down. There's a blessed home prepared way over on glory land, in bright glory land, blessed glory land. I have trusted in his love and now I'm heaven bound. Praise his holy name, salvation has been brought down. Glory, praise the Lord, salvation has been brought down. Go and shout and tell it to the world around. Tell it today, tell it today. Preach the word of God that we might leave the shining crown. Tell the lost salvation is full and free. Spread the news all over the land and sea. Tell it afar. Tell it afar. Praise the Lord. Salvation is full.